listening audience, I am so excited about this Plan, Prepare, Protect tonight. I have known one of our guests. I go back to when they were state representatives and I was chairing our present Councilwoman Sherelle Parker. Just cheering her on as a leader here in the city who have definitely shown leadership and personality, and she has plans that she's executed that I watched over the years. And I'm so happy to have her this evening, as well as someone that I feel like I've known for a long time because I'm all the way on the other side of the city of Southwest. And State Representative Isabella Fitzgerald was always, on the other side in the Northwest. And so I never got a chance to, run into you because of the distance. And I just felt tonight was so important to bring two powerful women who have certainly done a lot for the city, and both for the local, which is the city, and also on the state level. And before we get started, I just want to, I like to give women their flowers while they're here. And for the listening audience who may not know about who I am, Tracey Gordon, the Register Wilson here in the city of Philadelphia, and who my honorable esteemed guests are, and some of the things that they've done in their tenure. So I want to first start and introduce City Councilwoman Cherelle Parker. She's a Democrat on City Council, and she was elected in 2015. She previously served also as a Democratic member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives from 2005 through 2015. That's 5 terms, I believe. Is that 5 terms you did? When I think of North Philly, I think of Down, Okay. But when I think of you, I always think it's just, the Northwest. So what you did in your bio, here's the actual areas: East Mount Airy, West Oak Lane, East Oak Lane, Alney, Lawncrest, Lawndale, Oxford Circle. And how do you pronounce that last one that I skipped over?
Was it Burholme? Yeah, Burholme, yes.
Burholme, where's that at?
Burholme is right near the Oxford Circle area. So it's Oxford Circle, Burholme, Lawncrest, and Lawndale, and they all are sort of contiguous to each other.
And I never knew that those were the areas that you actually covered, because I always think of up there by Relish.
The mighty Fitzgerald, she's always thinking about the mighty temple.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, and I'm like, oh, Relish, they having something. Oh, I'm going up to Relish. That's all I know about the Northwest. But I also know that the homes are beautiful. These Black people, they got nice homes up here. And I talked to you and found out that a lot of city retirees, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. One of the things that I wanted to emphasize, that Councilwoman Cherelle Parker was instrumental in increasing the realty transfer tax by 0.1% to borrow $100 million in bonds to eliminate the backlog for the city's income-based home repair program, which is the basic system repair, weatherization of the system, and adaptive modification. That, to me, when I seen that legislation and when I seen that bill, I just was like, that right there, that's an equalizer. And the reason why it's so important to me is because what we're going to talk about this evening with these Tangled Titles, and then for the listening audience, many of you all know what a Tangled Title is, and it's simply a property that you may have legal interest, but it's still in the dead relative's name or the dead person's name. For example, for the audience, you're living in your grandmother's name, and she always said, hey, this is your property. I'm leaving you this property. You own this when I die. And it's like a verbal promise or a verbal, exchange. And in the state of Pennsylvania, there's no such transfer as a verbal one. It has to be legally done through paperwork. And unfortunately, we, most particularly the Black and Brown community, don't understand that process. And as a result of that, we are sitting on a whole bunch of property in your council district and in your state legislative district that are in danger of being lost because simply it's still in a dead person name and they can't do anything about it. So that legislation alone was just phenomenal that, you got it when I came into your office that day and told you about the program that I wanted to start. And so I wanted to thank you for that. And our second esteemed guest, who, like I said, I really got to know when I came out to your virtual town hall, State Representative Isabella Fitzgerald, and you said that all the people that was viewing it was like, they really get it. And they was like saying, hey, I need a will, or hey, my sister lives in, the house is still in grandpa's name. And they start realizing that they can't do anything legal. They can't sell it. They can't pass it down. They can't get equity loans to send their kids to college. They can't buy homeowners insurance and a row house. That if that house that next to you burn down, you're going to get some type of damage. And you're sitting in row houses that you are not eligible to get homeowners insurance simply because it's in that dead person's name. So I wanted to say, firstly, Izzy, as they call the state representative, was born and raised in Philly and a 40-year resident of West Oak Lane. Over the years, she's had many titles: concerned neighbor, check, me too. Committee person, check, me too. Ward chairperson, haven't gotten there yet. Ward leader, check. Public safety area coordinator for the 14th Police District and longtime staffer for State Representative Dwight Evans. Because every time I think of your area, I always think of Cherelle, Dwight, Marion Tasco, and now State Representative Israel Fitzgerald. And I'm sure it's more, but just seeing your journey, State Rep, as just a concerned citizen. That's what we all started as, concerned citizens. And now as servants, I feel as a responsibility, and I'm responding to your question, which you asked me, State Representative Fitzgerald, was why have we gotten to a pandemic of 10,000? And that's only because the study from the Pew Charitable Trust identified those 10,000. It's more of tangled titles sitting in areas that fall in 19143, 19139, 19134, 19132, and 19140, which directly connects to the areas that have high gun violence. And even if you all don't have the tangled title problem, it's still going to be a problem for you because one house can just tear a block up. And that one house, if they was able to get that grant money that you have allocated, if they were eligible, they said that crime goes down 22% on one block. And so we get into the questions, because I can talk forever about this. But I wanted to say to you, State Representative Isabella Fitzgerald, that I know you are aware by now that we send from $80 to $100 million to Harrisburg and estate and inheritance taxes every single year. We are one or two in line with the most out of all of the 67 counties. It's either us or Montgomery County. And I'm proud to say in less than 2 years under my tenure through a pandemic, we still sent that much. And so I wanted to ask you, how can we get more of those funds to come back to Philly to help people stay in their homes? Because this is what it's all about. This is about helping people, families remain in what they consider their property.
So what I've done, or what we've done, my office has done from the time I've been here, even before I got here, we do a home, it's called home ownership. It's called HOPE, Home Ownership Prosperity and Employment Conference. And it's basically an educational conference, but it gives all kinds of information on, how to maintain your home, how to buy a home, how to estate planning, all sorts of things. So to us, it's about educate education. It's about educating all the time, not just once a year, but providing that information to people all the time. We also had partnered with an organization called Rebuilding Together Philadelphia. And what Rebuilding Together Philadelphia does is in order to maintain and sustain communities, they go into communities and update, fix, repair, replace major systems. So roof repairs, furnaces, in order, because sometimes those things are the only barriers to people staying in their homes. And if you can keep a person in their home, then that maintains a community. If that home doesn't, that's what we've done.
So you said the education part, the aggressive education, and that's what I was saying about the funding that we send to Harrisburg. Once you all state legislative, take it to the House and say, hey, we have a crisis here, and we certainly send a lot of money up to Harrisburg. How can you all help? To come up with some sort of legislation to put back into Philly some of this funding for the Tangled Title Fund and just some of this education, as far as getting it out via television, etc. I was under to ask City Council Person Sherelle Parker this question. One of the things I know when I came up to your office and we were talking about my PDI or Probate Deferment Initiative program, and I was telling you, that we was going to, use the poverty level, I think it's 150%. And the first thing you said is, Register, I support, whatever you want to support, but it must be inclusive of my community that I serve as well. And I've never forgotten that, but I never gotten a chance for you to explain to me what you meant by that.
So one, let me thank you, Register, and your entire team, not just for tonight, but for the previous virtual event that we had where Sharon participated. Rep. Fitzgerald, I know what you mean when you talk about that feedback with people saying, oh, it was great. It was wonderful. I never thought about that. I didn't know how to do it. Well, heck, I didn't know half of the stuff that Sharon was talking about relative to the will. So thank you and your office, and for your being so proactive. Without anyone sort of having to give you an agenda, because you were so closely connected to the people and to the ground, you knew what needed to happen. What the Register has just described to you is this concept that I have that really burns me up. And that is, at times, we've seen policymakers develop policies that sort of pit the have-nots against those who have just a little teeny bit. And so in a district like the one I represent that includes Rep. Fitzgerald's legislative district, and you heard the Register mention those neighborhoods, people look at them as being pretty stable, but I will tell you that many of these homeowners who are here, predominantly African American community, they moved on up like the Jeffersons in the 1970s or so. So if you start saying, Cherelle, North Philly, you should think about me when you know North Philly too, because my family came from North Philly and they moved on up there like the Jeffersons. But my district, it has some of the highest rates of home ownership in the city. Most of the neighborhoods in my district are what are considered to be middle neighborhoods, and they are communities on the verge of growth or decline, depending on investments to support them. So, for example, in 2019, the citywide home ownership rate was about 52%, and that was according to Pew's 2021 State of the City report. But there are other parts of my district. Listen, is it an aging housing stock? Yes, many of them were built in the 50, 60, 70 years ago. But, and I have a high rate of immigrants in the Ninth Councilmatic District, where home ownership, like in Alney and Oxford Circle, were put in reach for them. But having the dollars needed to maintain those properties, this aging infrastructure, without the technology, the electrical work needing to be done, plumbing work that
Yeah.
needs to be done, preservation, everything was
Sewage.
income-based and registered. And just like you just said, I said, wait a minute. Some of the highest rates of home ownership in the city, wards with 74, 75% home ownership rate. So that means when you own a house, you're a significant contributor to the tax base, right? Because you pay your property taxes to protect your most valuable asset. However, you're not eligible for the Basic Systems Home Repair Program because, listen, not because you're rich, but because you retired, and so you get a little piece of your income, right? And I get a little pension, right? Thank God I had a good city job, or I worked at the bud plant or Tasty Cake, and I have a pension, and I get a little piece of Social Security, and that takes me just over the limit. So when you and I were talking, and I was saying, hey, we have to go to 120% of the area median income, because does that cover rich people? No, for a family of four, it just gives people who are just over the line an opportunity to benefit from some of the programs that are offered in the city. Listen, that they supported and contributed to its tax base long before we began bustling with new growth. And so I'm always going to be conscious of that, Register, because Rep Fitzgerald, you know, nothing burns me up more than when I hear people talking about the regions we represent and say, you know, y'all up there. Y'all up there. They are right. Because registered, they might drive by and they see the patch of grass, they see the yard, and they see it mowed. But if you get out the car and you walk like we do when we are canvassing, and people open up their doors, and you look and you see the aging that has taken place and the work that needs to be done. That's what let us know that we had to make sure we were concerned about supporting middle neighborhoods and those who were in the middle. So thank you, Register, for even paying attention to it and listening.
So can you talk to us about the importance of the BSRP grants and how they impact the Tangled Titles and your support of the grant passed, the $100 million bond?
So one, and thank you for sort of providing an overview of how what we did when we increased the realty transfer tax. You mentioned $100 million bond issuance. We took 60 million of those dollars and used that for the BSRP, the Basic Systems Home Repair backlog. But we also created another program, which was a loan program called Restore, Repair, Renew. Again, to try to reach that constituency that's not eligible for the BSRP program. And so we were really excited about that. We supported the Philly First Home grants that give a down payment and closing cost assistance for first-time home buyers with incomes up to 120% of the AMI, or $10,000, like up to $10,000 or 6% of the purchase price. And we continue to with what we just did and Register. This is what I'm really excited about, that $400 million neighborhood preservation initiative plan to improve housing stability and revive neighborhood commercial quarters and home preservation. And I also just want to just add this for the record: $58 million for Philly First Home, 38 more million for BSRP, 6.5 million for the land bank, and Register, 7.6 million to prevent and resolve the Tangled Title issue. So your cries and your leadership hasn't fallen, on deaf ears. 7.6 million for the adaptive mod, and then 26.6 million for neighborhood infrastructure. Rep Fitzgerald, guess what we're talking about? Retaining walls, driveways, alleys, trees, and sewers. So we're structuring those programs right now. And in addition to that, we've established a task force to determine how to address racial biases and home appraisals. Now, listen, imagine you have a tangled title, right? Because you haven't, listened to the register and learned to do what Sharon has recommended that you do and get that will, because we, particularly in Black and Brown communities, haven't been fortunate enough to have an attorney on retainer, right? So we didn't do that part. But imagine what happens if we get you through our program, the register gets you through the program that she created, which is very innovative. And now you own it. So now you own it and it's clear. You've got the deed, you're eligible for programs, and you fix it up. And then an appraiser comes. And all of the work you went through to own it, all of the work you went through to fix it up and get it right, the programs we all fought for. And then somebody comes in and tells you that your house is worth, $100,000 less than what it really is. Because of racial biases in those home appraisals. So I mentioned all of that because it's all connected. BSRP is extremely important. Aging in place. And I know you're going to show us some data here, but when you look at those maps, no one should be surprised when they look at the 10th ward where Representative Fitzgerald is the state rep and the ward leader, or the 50th ward where I'm the ward leader and I'm the state rep. And you say, wow, there's an overwhelming amount of tangled titles in those areas because we were an overwhelming amount of first generation of everything. First generation homeowners, first generation college attendees, first generation, my grandparents, Cherelle, you get a good job and you don't have to be a domestic worker. So they didn't get, do a will, but now they've aged. And as children have come in to, sort of take over those homes, register, listen, they don't have the wherewithal to do it. And so that's why the BSRP fixing up those systems. That's why Restore, Repair, Renew, and all of those programs under MPI that I just summarized, that's why they're so important. And it shows how our work is interconnected. What you educated us about, what the representative, the funding she secures for the organization she's been working with, what we do in the city. Not either or, it has to be intergovernmental, all of us working together.
We want the state to understand that we're in a crisis here in Philadelphia, a housing crisis. And it's definitely a local problem. It's definitely a state problem. And under the Fair Housing Act, it may end up being a federal problem. I had a conversation today with a group, a CDC from Puerto Rico. And they have some legislation, a bill that's getting ready to be introduced in Congress about heirs property and the fact that they were denied FEMA because in Puerto Rico, they have the tangled title problem. And now they're making it so that FEMA has addressed this, and they're saying that they are now allowed to reapply for the FEMA grant. And they're using it as some considerations, like, although their house is not in your name, why shouldn't you be eligible for these funds until you can get it in your name? Because you're certainly paying taxes and you're certainly living in there, and you have some ownership interest in there because you're an heir. Because when you die without that will, it goes into the intestate. So in intestate, even though it's still in your dead mom's name, you still have a biological interest in this house. Sharon, talk to them about, and then we're going to go more into detail about the tangled title, about the Probate Deferment Initiative and how we created this program to address low, but also middle income, but how the real problem is not necessarily the fees that is, the state made up, is more like how much it costs legally. How much money it costs to legally untangle some of these titles.
Untangling titles, register can really be expensive. The reason that you started the Probate Deferment Initiative that we refer to as PDI is so we would have an opportunity to waive the fee for actually raising an estate. Because sometimes to untangle a title, you might have to raise 2 estates. You might, hopefully you don't have to raise 3. I've had to raise 4 before. And so what we really were trying to do is to just give you a little bit of motivation. So that was just a carrot to get the person in to say, come on, open up this estate. Let's get going. And the good thing about that is you get in, we have a separate lane for you to come in, get that estate raised, and ultimately get the deed changed in the name that it should be, in the living heir, away from the deceased heir. And Commissioner Leonard, who's the commissioner of the Recorder of Deeds, he agreed to just file the deed for free. So we did everything that we could do to make it easier for you to come in and to get started on untangling that title. And as the register said, not only do you get a fee deferral, but you also get referral to an attorney so that you have somebody with you from one of the legal services organizations that will assist you in unraveling what has become a mess just by virtue of death and time and neglect.
So I have a question, Register.
Yes.
The process. So how long, where does a person, how long does this process take? I mean,
good question. And it goes by each estate. You know, sometimes you have to find a relative. Sometimes relatives aren't cooperative. Some people don't want to sign over the renunciations. Sometimes it's layers. It's like it was in grandfather's name and now the granddaughter is there, but the grandfather had 5 children. One may be in jail, one may be living out of town, don't want to have anything to do with it. So it's so complicated, a complicated legal problem that they have to have a lawyer to help them untangle it. So we just had a family come in that lives, I think, in your area, and they were in a tangled title simply because they didn't know where to bring the will. Their mother left the will.
They didn't know.
Sisters, right? They didn't know to bring it. So they get to one of your resource fairs and they qualify for the BSRP grant. Sure, let's go. So they come in the question, do you own your home? Yeah, because they think they own it because mom left it to me. And then when they give you the paperwork,
mom said she left it to you. It's not.
Yes,
okay.
Right.
And
Okay.
That's not a transfer. And so, long story short, that was one of the easier ones that we did. And because but her sister, I think it was 2 or 3 sisters, they all signed the renunciation. They wanted the sister to live in the place. They didn't want anything. So that was a more easier one that was easy solvable through one of the agencies, because we don't untangle them. We refer them out to the legal agency. Or it could be one that I just was telling you, one brother was in jail and he died and he had 4 kids. And the test state could be a nightmare and it may take a little bit more time. And that's why it's more equally important. You'll hear the tangled title, but I want you also to hear make a will.
Absolutely.
So all your intake questionnaires, Councilwoman and say, that should be the main question on your end. Do you own your property? Yes. And then the next question is your name on the deed? Because they think they own their property. So if it, no, is my name? No, it's still in my mother's name. And then you send them on to us because you got to get them educated. That's the thing, is we're not talking about it with superstitious. And let's throw the maps up, because I know we wanted to make sure. Let's start with Councilwoman Cherelle Parker map. So that's the city's map, and you'll see the darker, the more concentrated, and see where the red is. And some of them are, the lighter is probably the more, not necessarily educated, but the wealthier, because wealthier people have lawyers that, they learn the value of putting things in the will because they want to have a say in how they transfer their wealth.
That map is clearly on point, and it affirms what you heard me say about our constituency. Although there is and I want to make this correlation too. We see that there is a very high number, the top 10% of tangled titles in that area, that corner, again, that 50th ward coming down to that 10th ward. It's also, it has one of the highest rates of home ownership, Black home ownership in the city. And it is also one of the highest voting and civically engaged constituencies in the city of Philadelphia. So again, this group that owns home ownership is high because they use every little bit they have to gain that dignity that comes along with home ownership. They had the job, they went to work, they had the pension, they're getting Social Security. The part they didn't do was the will. So that education that you hear, that you were talking about, the workshops that you talked about, Sharon coming on, you know, those intake forms that you just mentioned.
Change them.
You know,
Change
listen,
them.
right, you got to add that to the list. Now we give a booklet to people. Another, you know what I call it? I call it, and this is something I'm not going to let go of. I call it like we need a citywide succession planning campaign. A citywide housing succession planning campaign. Now, somebody is listening to this and they're going to say, well, that sounds a bit morbid. What is that Sherelle Parker talking about? But many of my homeowners and many homeowners in the city of Philadelphia, particularly those who are aging, if, you know, I'm 75 right now, you know, I might not be here when I'm 100. So imagine us spreading the word and having a real campaign about estate planning, Tangled Title.
Like making a celebration.
Yes.
You know, I mean, if you know, when we celebrate Juneteenth, the component of that, or Kwanzaa, you know, that need to be a new candle, the protected generational wealth candle, to add that to the candle thing. That has
people don't know.
And
that's what I was saying to you earlier. I think that you know, the Register of Wills office, I've heard of the office forever. I just learned what a short form was. Do you know what I'm saying?
Certificate.
People don't know, and I agree with the councilwoman. People, we need, it's about educating people. It's about, you know, telling them how important. And I was never so convinced of how important, you know, an estate plan was. I only had 2 sons, and I think they like each other, but you know, like if something happened to me, I mean,
it's not about the like and dislike and they get along and all that. What you want to do is say, y'all not even going to fight about anything.
Absolutely.
Or whatever. Here's who the executor is going to be. Here's what I want done with my property. Make sure you pay my estate taxes, because whether you pay them or not, the interest is accruing. That's a whole nother topic that we talk about. But I tell you, you're talking about the fighting, and it's so sad because that granddaughter really thinks that's her house.
Our community is
the
clueless.
Grandmother had 5 kids, and she got to get them to sign over paper saying you can have 1/5 of what the state, because she didn't leave the will, saying that I inherited, and you got to get all 5 of them to agree to sign that over to you, because you know Grandma Mary really wanted little Jamila to have that property. You wanted to have a property, you have to put it in writing. Cherelle, within the next 25 years, the country is going to have the largest transfer of generational wealth in its history. Trillions of dollars is transferring from the baby boomers, the ones that you said that worked their way up like George Jefferson to live up in Mount Airy. Is getting ready to transfer to the baby boomers. It's a travesty, like State Representative Fitzgerald said, how could this possibly happen? Because when you buy a car, what do they make you get? Insurance. Homeowners insurance, car insurance. When you buy a home, if it's a mortgage, you know that broker and the realtor say, oh, okay, now this is the part, you're gonna have to have home insurance because we need to protect you. Life insurance, they told me I was a single parent buying a home. How many kids you got? 4. well, just in case something happened to you, you need to have life insurance policy so you won't have to do the GoFundMe. Never once did anyone say to me that I needed to I should make a will just in case something happened and you have minor children. Never once did they ever tell me this in college. And I graduated Fox School of Business, Temple University. Never once was anything ever mentioned about wills, estates, planning, intestate, short certificate. The people go up to the funeral and say, hey, I'm getting ready to go to the bank and withdraw mom's money. I still got her, bank account because I got to pay for this funeral. And they get there and the bank is going to say, you need a short certificate. And they may be wrong because if it's $10,000 or less and you have certain documents, they have to release the money to you. If you have proof that you are a relative, you have a funeral bill and the death certificate under 10,000, they have to release. Some of them don't even know that. Or if it's $10,000 or more, you got to come probate and come to me. The people that probate, what? Register, what? Where? City Hall? Councilwoman Sherelle Parker, help.
And they when
Isabella, help. They
and
not
listen,
let this
when they
follow.
call us, that's why we are calling you. Right.
Absolutely,
So
absolutely.
we've gotta really just and every chance I can, I want you to know we're gonna do everything that we can to let people know about the leadership that you've provided and the direction you've given to the office of the Register of Wills and how you've made it matter to the people here in the city of Philadelphia. After we leave here today, and because I know each of you, I know we are going to continue educating our residents about estate planning, Tangled Titles, and connecting them with resources, because that's what we are as elected officials, right? We're chief connectors. Okay, so my job is, you need that help? Okay, let me get you directly to the register, and her staff's gonna walk you through this process of how you get it fixed. That we're going to continue, Rep. Fitzgerald and I, seeking additional funding and resources to assist, listen, both low and middle income households with home preservation issues, repairs, estate planning, Tangled Titles, and Register. I just want to say a special thank you again for acknowledging middle neighborhoods and those who are in the middle. And we've got to change language and narrative.
Yes, we do.
Because everyone will tell you we need to do everything about, low income, low income, low income. It is incumbent upon us to do everything we can to eliminate the high poverty rate that we have in this city. But it is also incumbent upon us to make sure we do our best to help preserve, particularly when it comes to the housing stock and other aging infrastructure of those people who've been significant contributors to our tax base. And when they need us, we're not here. Why? Because people have pit the have-nots against those who have just a little bit. So I hope we will continue to change that narrative, because some people, they get a little funny when you say, working people. When you start talking about, no, what about those who are in the middle? They look at you side-eyed, like you're not supposed to be concerned about them. If we don't address it now, what do you think will happen to the crumbling infrastructure? What do you think will happen to the electrical and the walls falling apart, the steps falling apart, if we don't address
row homes.
it?
When your roof collapses,
row homes. Yes.
You row homes. When that one roof collapses, it affects your roof. I don't care if your roof. This is not one household. This is 10,000 families displaced. If we can, they always say, what are you, the seventh poorest, largest city? So can you imagine if we could put a dent in the Tangled Titles and reverse not only with the housing stock rise, but our property value will rise? University of Penn did that study. One house receives a BSRP grant, and put the link up. You got to read it. It decreases crime on the block. And I've been a block captain, and I know for a fact the reason why I have very minimal crime on my block is because I'm the block captain, right? And because I make sure I'm used to put it in their doors about the basic system repairs, which is how I learned of the Tangled Title. because some of me and some of my friends, oh, we was like, yeah, I got some new windows. Yep, I just got my new roof. And others was coming and saying, I can't get it because it's still in my uncle's name or whatever. Let's talk about what your thoughts are on the direct correlation that we found. And John put the map up for us with the shooting victims by zip codes and the Tangled title. We'll find that map for you. You got to see that. What do you think?
Register, can I just say one other thing about the education piece?
Yes.
The other thing, Councilwoman Parker, when we are educating people about PDI, we have to make sure that people in middle-class neighborhoods take away the shame, because there are people living in nice houses that they mow every week, that they paint to make sure they're nice, that is in somebody else's name. And we have to let them know that they got to get to the Register of Wills office, and there's no shame in your game. And if you are talking about generational wealth, helping poor people is necessary. Those who have the less among us need government support. But hey, government support is for everybody. And middle class, that's not a dirty word. If you really talking about generational wealth, when you are working with a middle class neighborhood, you are likely working with people who are 2 generations removed from the deceased person. And the more that we can make that happen, the more that we can increase the stability of that neighborhood. Buying a house is a luxury these days. It's not the given that it used to be for working people.
It's not the American way anymore.
And right now, prices are crazy. So as we educate, we also need to remind people not to be ashamed of this. You didn't know it. The knowledge wasn't out there. So now that it's out there, get yourself straight and come in and fix that Tangled title.
Now, Councilwoman and State Rep, look at this map that was put out by Controller Rebecca Reinhardt, and see how closely it almost matches where the Tangled titles are in the city of Philadelphia, concentrated in Black and brown communities. And I'm glad that you brought up the fact that you also have leadership over a large immigrant population. I had did some studies out there and could not believe, yes, you do have a large immigrant population. And a lot of them believe that their traditions trump the law. In other words, we heard some of them have some of their old traditions that they're, thinking that it passed down word of mouth, and they don't even realize that, putting themselves in jeopardy of being able to get foreclosed on. That's how developers are stealing property. And sometimes even when you try to go to sell the property, they're undervaluing our homes. Don't you think that if we can get a hold on these Tangled titles, that the crime in our cities, I believe that the crime would decrease?
I wholeheartedly and Register and Rep Fitzgerald and Sharon. That's why I think we need to be unapologetic about continuing to advocate for home ownership and working to enhance it as much as we possibly can. Over during the pandemic, we worked really, really hard at the local, state, and the federal level for rental assistance. And while, our congressional delegation, they're working hard to secure funds, the state of program, our city's program, but every chance I get to say out loud in city council, is it essential and is it important that we provided rental assistance during this time? It absolutely is, but don't we dare act like, it's the be all end all to putting people on a path to self-sufficiency. I'm not going to be feel good until the only people who are renting are friends like my girlfriend who says, Cherelle, you are never going to get me to own a house again because I don't want to shovel snow. I don't want to rake those leaves. So I only want people like her to rent because that's what they decide to do. But we've got to continue to push home ownership because it is the first asset and the first way, particularly in Black and brown communities, of how we build wealth. And guess what? It's kind of like when we talk about gun violence reduction and overall crime reduction, I will argue to you that there is no government program that can serve as help us reduce crime and put people on a path to self-sufficiency than a job that provides family sustaining wages where you can walk with your head up and your shoulders back. I'm paying for my own health care. I'm paying for my own retirement security. I earn enough to save to take my family on vacation. Now I want to go to sleep at night at a certain time so I can get up in the morning and so I can go make this money so that I can make sure I take care of my family and that I can own and I'm not renting. So I hope
and
that
just like you said, they got the rental assistance. Well, what about some mortgage assistance now? You know, because it was people that had mortgages that lost their jobs as well. And that's what you're talking about, the middle income, that it seemed like that they can never get a break. Because the low income, you know, they get their pot, and then the rich have, and then the middle income is like always, you know, in jeopardy.
Register, how many people do you know, and Rep Fitzgerald, how many people do you know who couldn't go to get the loan from a prime bank, and they were seniors? And so, you know, they watched that commercial on television and they saw Magnum PI, and Magnum PI told them to, you know, don't you worry about it. We'll get this reverse mortgage and I'll give you the money to fix your bathroom and to do this and to do that. And the next thing you know, the senior dies, and guess what? The children or whomever, they have that balloon payment at the end. And 9 times out of 10, they don't have usually, I'm dealing with one now, it's about almost $130,000. Family's going to lose that family home. They're going to lose
their house.
The reverse mortgage.
Because they didn't qualify probably for the basic system repair. They didn't know, maybe didn't know about it because that same, you know, seniors not going to sit in no house where the plumbing is bad. They certainly can't sit where there's electrical hazard coming up. So it is really a dilemma. And the fact that the Pew Charitable Trust identify, so they actually identify where they are. So what do you think, how do you think that we can get this information directly out to the households? I'll start with State Representative Isabella.
I think doing what you're doing. I think our home ownership, prosperity and employment conference, something like that, something, you know, where you know, people are gathered. We have to resources. We have email blasts. You know what I'm saying? We have
remember we all did in the water bill.
We have PSAs.
Remember that, Cherelle, that y'all put in the water bills to let them know that you could buy the insurance of the sewage bill.
But register, it has to be constant, and it has to be consistent. It has to be, it's like the councilwoman said earlier, and you said it's about education. It has to educate, because this is something we did not know. So, you know, you're teaching us. You're teaching us about Tangled Titles. You're teaching us about wills. You're teaching us about estate planning. You're teaching us, but it's something that you know.
Well, we got to put into legislation. Like I hope you sign. I know you're going to sign off on the legislation that the Committee on Housing introduced, where the funeral parlors have to give the customers information about our office when, you know, they come to bury people. I mean, sometimes people think at that point it's too late, but not necessarily, because most of the time they go to the funeral directors and say, hey, how do I have access to stuff? And so I thought that was an excellent bill.
However we can get the information out. I mean, you know, our office, Councilwoman's office, we send out stuff to people all the time. We can include it as part of, you know, as part of a message. But I think what the important thing that Councilwoman Parker was saying, it's about the state, the city, the federal government. It's a collective. It's all of us working together. You know, it's all of us. It's not just the city. It's not just the state. It's all of us working together. It's a collective. It's a collective.
I wanted to let you all know that I was so shocked when I went to attend the Register of Wills Association this summer. And I went, the conference was in Pittsburgh, and I just was walking around. I was like, how do you all, handle y'all Tangled title or problem? They said, Tangled, what? Oh, well, they don't even have a problem. We're the only county out of the 67 that has that problem. And by the way, it's 68 trillion with a T that's getting ready to transfer within the next 2 decades from one generation to the next. And if we don't get this information out to them to make sure they have their paperwork right, then this 10,000 that we know is more is going to continue to grow. And when we went to them, they did not even know what we were talking about. They automatically know to make a will because a lot of them have farmland and stuff like that. So when did it get to the point where we don't even talk about it? I think that we have an opportunity right now within the next 20 years to really make a change in the history of Philadelphia. And I just want to thank both of you all for appreciating and hearing what we're trying to, the message that we're trying to send. And we need to figure out a way that, until they get the Tangled Untitled, we need to figure out how we can get them that money anyway.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And Puerto Rico, I just had a meeting with them, and the language would enable them to be able to get the basic system repair while they are in the process of, addressing the Tangled title, as opposed to, nope, you're not qualified. No, you can't get it. And then they're sitting in houses, they still paying taxes, and they're sitting in houses that's crumbling. I just want to get some closing thoughts on what you.
People can get property tax agreements, but with Tangled titles, but not BSRP, right? So you can get an agreement to pay your property taxes, but you're not eligible for a BSRP if you're not the owner on record. When I was listening to you, Register and Rep Fitzgerald and Sharon, I thought, you know what we're talking about? Government, I'm always concerned about the rubric, right? Systems, standard operating procedures. So everybody gets access to the same thing. It's not about who you know, but it's a standard operating procedure, the protocols. Mm-hmm. And how can we find a way to make adjustments within our standard operating procedures and protocols to make this idea of getting a will a requirement? And so any innovative strategies that we can come up with, we need to do it. That intergovernmental approach. I mean, like Rep Fitzgerald talked about you and how proactive your office has been. How about when you all came up with the movie? What was that? The movie?
Register Yes.
So listen, like that was such an innovative thing to think about, because all of these movies were popular movies and people remembered those scenes.
Yes.
And the last thing I want to say is this, because Sharon, you hit my spirit really heavy when you started mentioning the people who in some instances live in what we think of on the outside as very beautiful homes. Number one, you've never been inside, so you really don't know what's going on in there. And they are proud. And it's a certain amount of dignity, and they don't want anybody to think that they are dependent on anything else, or need government, so we do have to work through that. But I will argue this, so that we don't shame and guilt ourselves. Just like we say, we can't be what we don't see. I don't know that I can be something if I've never seen somebody who looks like me do that before. We also don't know what we don't know when we've never known.
Right.
Right? So my grandmother was first generation homeowner, and along with my grandfather. And just as an FYI, y'all know, everybody knows her state representative, Isabella Fitzgerald. That's Miss Isabel for me. I grew up on the same block where she raised her kids, and we've been in there all of our lives. We've been there. But so we just have to work to change it, and we do it a little bit at a time, any way that we can. but we find a way to streamline it and make the
Yes.
process easier, you know, and simple. And we need everybody, nonprofits, government, private sector. Like banks should be doing something, but how do you encourage the private sector to you know, imagine somebody's coming in to get a loan from you, and you say to them, okay, you want this home improvement loan, but what if the bank said, before you can get approved for the home improvement loan, you're approved, but if you don't have a will, then you can't get, those are strategies. Like
Yes,
when
I
we
agree.
think about all of the elements coming together. So, you know, you've led in your role, and Rep Fitzgerald and what she did with Rebuilding Together and the HOPE program, you know, and what we do in our own time, in our own space, and working together. We're gonna make it standard operating procedure, because we ain't never gonna stop it. We're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep repeating it. And y'all know people will get tired of hearing it when we become like a chorus. We're all singing the same tune, the same song. And that's what Rep Fitzgerald was mentioning.
And Sharon, I talk about that idea about, you know, you've been living here for 20 years. You mean to tell me I can't get the BSRP grant because I'm in the process, or it's still in my mom's name? Like, it has to be.
But think about what's going on. You live in a neighborhood, you're a little bit better off. We using guidelines for people in a house. What's the household income? If we use the normal 200% of federal poverty guidelines, we're talking about $53,000. Now that sounds like a lot of money. But if you got two people in the house that got a city job, you know, and maybe one more else got a part-time job, now you over the limit. And you living in the house because you really can't afford to live in your own house. So it's not even necessarily like a luxury thing. People are doing what they have to do. And so when you do that in a poverty setting, you're not being punished by it for these programs. But if you do it in a middle class setting, you're being punished because now it looks like you got $60,000 in your household. You got $70,000 in your household. Yeah, but I couldn't step out of that household and make a living by myself. And remember, what middle class means today, Register, is not what it used to be.
Right.
Middle class today might mean I may not be living paycheck to paycheck, but I might be living 2 paychecks to paycheck. You know, maybe I got a 2 paycheck cushion or a 3 paycheck cushion. That doesn't mean I got extra money to pay for an attorney. You know, money does not equal knowledge. That doesn't mean I know about a will, or I know about these other steps that I need to take. So she's right. We can't be pitting one part of our population against the other. You know, during the time of gang wars, when I grew up, all of the programs came through for the kids that were gang warring. And we were like, we don't gang war, but we sure would love a summer job. You know, but there was no programs for us. And we don't want to take that tack. We don't want to say, you got to be on your last leg before we'll help you. No, we want to help you get to the place you need to be in terms of wealth, and we want to help you stay there.
I just wanted to thank you all for coming on to talk about this issue, and we certainly going to continue talking about it, and we certainly send you updates, and we're going to do the second series of the Register Reacts. And by the way, the Hollywood producer, director, Eva DuVernay, she shouted us out because we used her movie Queen Sugar as a Register Reacts, and an Instagram page saying, thank you, this is an excellent way to educate people about estate planning. And that was like, Eva DuVernay noticed and watched our series, like we're on the map. And thank you to John Zimmerman, he's our communication director, who just told me and Sharon, you're going to meet up at this location at this time, and we're going to do this Register Reacts. And me and Sharon was like, oh, okay. And there it is. Wow, Queen Sugar being used in this way as a teaching tool makes me so happy. That came directly from her email. I was just, I was just happy about this. Like sometimes, we always come up, Cherelle, like problem. I hate that. Like, I want to hear, okay, that's a problem. I mean, we know that's a problem. Okay, so how are we going to solve it? 1, we got to educate people. 2, we got to come up with programs for the immediate assistant. And then 3, we just got to make sure people make wills. And that's what our program PDI does. And with the Tangled Titles, once we help you untangle it, it's mandatory. You make the will.
Can I just say this,
Yes,
Register?
yes.
Your passion is creating a movement. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yes.
I'm saying that where we had, no knowledge, or no understanding.
Yes.
But your passion, I mean, it's moved me and probably, everybody on this panel or everybody that you've spoken to. So I am so grateful, so very, very grateful that you are where you are, that you speak how you speak, and it's helped me, it's helped my staff, it's helped all the people that we encounter that you talk to. So I want to just thank you so very much.
Thank you all. Thanks, Sharon. Thank you all, John.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Markarel, for producing this good show. And I'll see you around. Everybody be safe.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Yeah.